Welcome everyone to the third of our 4 webinars within the Ideas and Conversations series. These webinars are proudly hosted by Bundaberg Regional Council, and they are planned to lead a community conversation towards the recovery work of our local arts industry. It's important that we acknowledge the traditional custodians on the many lands on which we gather today and pay our respects to the cultural knowledge and histories leading up to today. We also welcome any First Nations people joining us today and respect the cultural authority that they hold upon their traditional lands from where they come from, and also to the commitment that they hold towards the arts recovery for our region. The Bundaberg Regional Council area includes the traditional lands of the Gurang, Dadabalang, Gurang and Baili peoples, and we pay respects to the thousands of generations of continuous culture represented by elders in this country. All webinars in the series will be recorded and viewed by our community panel, who will lead a conversation on the 12th of September to localise the valuable information that will be shared today. This panel includes a Q&A session and will be streamed on Facebook Live. Our panellists include Trudie Leigo, who's with us today. How are you, Trudie?
I am excellent. Thanks, Robert, and hi to everyone.
Awesome. And we also, on that panel, will have Phil Oakley and Jess O'Neill. And it will be hosted by ABC Wide Bay's Brad Marcellos. So we thank all of our wonderful supporters who have committed to the webinar series. We're also looking for a studio audience for this one to attend and ask questions. So if you're interested, send in your questions for the chance to join us on the 12th. So today's webinar is titled Getting Business Savvy, and we are very lucky to be joined by another 2 amazing arts leaders, Shelley Pisani and Trudie Leigo. Shelley Pisani has over 25 years of arts experience as a marketer, teacher, studio artist, gallery director, and multi-arts producer. Currently, she is managing a major central Queensland-wide initiative called CQ Shopfront, building the business capacity of visual artists and designers to produce commercially viable products and services, with over 300 artists and 17 partners involved in its delivery. And Trudie Leigo is an independent curator and arts consultant who has worked in the arts industry for over 18 years. She holds an MA in Museum Studies and a BA in Art History and Theory and social anthropology from the University of Sydney. She is passionate about regional arts practice and helping artists and arts workers to build their careers. Trudie also works part-time for the Regional Arts Services Network as the project officer for the Wide Bay Burnett. Throughout today's webinar, there will be opportunities for Q&A sessions with Shelly and Trudie, so please feel free to join the conversation and ask any questions that you may have. So I will now hand over to our wonderful presenters. Please welcome Shelley and Trudie.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Robert. That's fabulous. So what I'll do now is, just while we get started, Shelley and I are going to be using a presentation to run through our little hints and tips today as we chat. So let me just bring up the right view, get myself all organised. Okay, great. So today, getting business savvy. What can you expect from today? So we're all about, we're really hoping that this will encourage you towards some new thinking, or perhaps some different thinking when thinking about your creative practice and running your creative business. So we're going to be sharing some hints and tips based on the 2 businesses that Shelley and I both run, as well as offering some insight and advice from other people's businesses that we admire. Today's only an hour, so it's not going to change your life, but we're hoping that it'll give you a bit of a starting point with some information and some ideas and some hot tips of where to go next. Particularly while we're in this economic downturn that's happened as a result of the pandemic. Everyone's aware that all industries are really impacted, but the arts industry is really doing it tough. So we're hoping that today is going to be a really useful session for those of you attending now, but also for those of you who are later watching this recording. Great, so let's launch into things. So what we might do is, Shelley and I are going to do some short presentations on different topics. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And what Shelley and I'll do is at the end of the presentation, we've allowed time so that we can go through those questions and help answer those for you. So let's get started. Okay, so when we're talking about the importance of defining your practice, what I mean is I hear a lot of people talk about their creative practice, but not so much their creative business. How you think about what you do really impacts what you do and shapes it in a way. So when you think about your business, do you see yourself as a business? Do you see yourself as an artist? Or do you see yourself as a hobbyist? There's absolutely nothing wrong with defining yourself as any of those three things, but it's really helpful to know what your goals are. And if your goal is to work full-time as an artist, or for it to pay your bills, for you to be able to, support yourself through your art and through what you produce, then considering yourself as a business and taking it seriously is a really good step, and I'd advise it. If you're not sure if you're a hobbyist or a business or what the implications of that might mean, there's a really useful resource that's available on the on the Australian by the Australian government, and it's a short quiz that you can take that'll define whether your practice is a hobby or a business, and then it'll give you the next steps of where to from there. So Shelley hopefully is able to share that in the chat for me as we're talking. Fabulous, thanks Shelley. We just thought that might be easy. A few things that we mentioned, you can sort of grab the links from that that's useful for you as we go through. Also, the benefits of getting comfortable with sort of defining yourself as a business is really helpful. And so I've got 6 key recommendations around doing that, because as a business, all businesses need to allow time for marketing, admin, all of that stuff that you need to carve out and take seriously. So here's some recommendations in that space. Get comfortable with defining yourself as a business. That's really important. Once you start thinking of yourself as a business, then you'll start implementing business thinking in the way that you approach things. Get an ABN. I think COVID, unfortunately, has been a really good way of highlighting how important ABN is, because a lot of people who were operating in the arts industry without an ABN have now really struggled to access JobSeeker and JobKeeper. So it's really helpful from that point of view, but also it just makes, being able to apply for opportunities, grant funding applications and really straightforward things like that really do require an ABN, and it'll just make your being able to invoice people a lot easier and smoother. Shelley's going to pop up in a link as well to the information about getting an ABN and what's involved. There's lots of ways that you can get information about starting a business or improving how you're running your business. But my recommendation is to start with the free stuff, because we know what our industry's like and everyone's not rolling in the cash and has it, ready to splash around. And there is some great free resources and support out there. There is heaps. I'm going to recommend stuff that I've personally used. I think that's really helpful at times. But do be aware there's plenty out there. Feel free to use and look at that. I just like to recommend things that I'm personally familiar with. The Queensland Government has a business plan template that is really straightforward, and there's lots of other resources and tools available on their website. It's quite extensive and there's a lot that you can use on there, so that's a great free resource. And going through a business planning process and using a template really helps you hone what it is that you're trying to achieve. And there's some really, really important steps in that process. There's a business based in Sydney run by Monica Davidson that's called Creative Plus Business. So I've done a few of Monica's free webinars. So she offers those as well as on her website, which there'll be a link to that as well. There's a whole page of free stuff. What I like about some of her resources is that they're tailored specifically to creative businesses. So where the Queensland government recommendations are about business in general, these are really tailored for creative thinkers and for creative businesses. So they're well worth checking out. So I was going to make a free recommendation, but game changer, it's actually no longer free, but I will mention it anyway. So No More Starving Artists was a book that you could get free from John Paul Fishback. There is a cost associated with that now. But I just wanted to flag him because I know people in our region have worked with him in the past, and I actually found that there's a lot of really useful tools in that book, but I'm not endorsing a product to be purchased. I'm just saying it used to be free. It's still well worth having a look at if that's something you want to do. Another great resource that I actually found this week was Esther Anatolis, who is the current director of NAVA, so the National Association for Visual Artists. On her personal website, so on her blog site, she has a whole listing of resources and templates that are great for arts organisations. So that might not be applicable to all of you, whether you're running an independent, arts business, or for those of you that are involved in an arts organisation or looking to start one. There is so much stuff on there that she's been so generous with sharing. So jump on that link and have a look and see if there's anything there that's relevant and helpful to you. I just thought it was a fabulous list of stuff and saves people having to reinvent the wheel themselves. But once you've exhausted the free resources out there, don't be afraid to invest in yourself. So you don't have to go around and spend thousands of dollars in starting your business, but by jumping on some low-cost opportunities, you'll really benefit from that. So that can be anything from, getting an accountant or working with your accountant for some really good advice on how to set your business up properly or how to improve how it's performing, or get advice around what structure it should be. I've spoken to countless people that have found, paying an accountant to help them access the job seeker or the job keeper payments has been worth every penny. So see that paying for professional development to upskill in your business is also really incredibly useful. And the other thing that's really available is you might actually want to invest in a coach. So somebody like Shelley in our own region, who has such a lot of experience in business planning and offers that as a service. Working with somebody like Shelley on that is super helpful. I've done her business planning session and it is really valuable. Somebody like Monica Davidson from Creative Plus Business or John Paul Fishback, there is other people out there as well, but having that coach talk through or mentor you through the process can be really helpful as well. So don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Really think about setting goals and understand what that looks like and what that means for the lifestyle that you want. Success, like a successful business and running that, looks totally different to everybody else. So for instance, my idea, the lifestyle I want or the business I want to run, I've chosen to run a part-time creative business because for me, I'm paying a mortgage still. I love having a part-time job that helps pay, I get a fortnightly salary that helps pay off the mortgage. And then the fluctuations and the unpredictability of running a freelance business is then I feel less at the mercy of that. So for me, running my business as a part-time business is a lifestyle choice that I've made. And I really enjoy having another part-time job and being a part of a larger organization because it provides me with access to networks and opportunities that you don't necessarily get as an independent as well. So think about that in regards to yourself. What is it that you're trying to achieve? What lifestyle goals do you want? And how does that impact where you're trying to go with your business? I'm going to hand over to Shelley now. Thank you very much, Shelley.
Hi everyone, thanks Trudie for a great start. So Trudie and I are giving you lots of tips and tricks based on our own business practices, and I'm a sole trader. I'm based here in Bundaberg and I currently have 3 businesses And I also have a part-time job like Trudie that I like to have, bringing in the income to pay the mortgage. But today I'm going to focus on the CQ Shopfront project and share some of the learnings that I have had from delivering a project that is actually turning into a business model in its own right, and share the story and the journey with the impact of COVID-19 and what I had to think about in order to make it work. Trudie? So there's 17 partners involved in the delivery of the program. So this is large scale. This is not something that any normal person would take on as a challenge, but it was a challenge actually when it came time for having to pivot the project when COVID-19 hit. I had to work with 17 organisations and get approval to change the business model and the delivery model of the project. So as stated earlier, the project is about working with artists across central Queensland. So that is focused on 7 local government areas, including the Bundaberg region. So if you are a visual artist or designer in the Bundaberg region, you can join the project for free. It's fully funded, and Bundaberg Regional Council is one of the funding partners along with CQ Rasen. So as a sole trader, I could not deliver the project without all of the partnerships. There's financial investment, but there's also a lot of in-kind coming from every single one of those partners that you see up on the screen. So building your network and your supports around you is vital in being able to deliver, but you've also got to allow time to nurture those relationships and build those relationships and keep them going. So it is a lot of work on a project this scale, but certainly worth it. Thanks, Trudie. So CQ Shopfront started out in March this year. It started out end of last year with some webinars that Trudie actually hosted through CQ Rasen on behalf of CQ Shopfront. So they were online already. So we had already tested the online environment. We did one face-to-face workshop weekend in Bundaberg in partnership with Flying Arts. And then within a week, we had a pandemic declared. So the rest of the project that was involving a lot of face-to-face delivery had to be changed. So very quickly, I had to rethink the whole model of the way I was delivering this program. And I had to look at how I could work in an online environment to keep the momentum of the project going that had been started in the Bundaberg region. You can see there, Zoom has been my friend like we are today. I have been doing lots of meetings on Zoom. The one that's in the photo there is a meeting with some of the key stakeholders and the artisans and residents who are going to be working on delivering projects across central Queensland over the next 6 months. So it has been a very, very valuable tool. One of the key learnings that I've had from this is that people will go online. So if you have thought that people won't go online to do courses, they do. We've had a lot of success with CQ Shopfront with going online with the workshops. And like the model that Council is doing with this particular webinar, I have recorded all of those and they are a resource for people to go back and watch. So the 8 different workshops that I ran, we recorded them and we've got them available online through the CQ Shopfront Facebook group. And people can go back and watch those, and there's been about 190 views of those videos now. So people are definitely going back and catching up and revising their business plans, which is the focus of those particular workshops. I think COVID-19 has actually created an opportunity for artists to really explore online environments for selling and distributing their work. It's certainly something that artists who are involved in CQ Shopfront are exploring. And a lot of people who didn't, even some of the professional artists who are artisans and residents, they were impacted by COVID-19. They didn't have an online selling environment, and now they're having to look at doing it. So it's something that needs to really be built into your business planning, is how do I sell my work, whatever that may be, whether it's a performance, whether it's visual art, anything. How are you distributing your product? It's a very important thing. Another key learning was getting to know online platforms. So I became very proficient at Zoom within a very short amount of time because I had to. I've been learning it, and now I actually get contracted by some people to actually deliver facilitate online Zoom training for other people. So I'm not even the deliverer, I'm just the host. So it's definitely a platform that you can explore, but there are other ones out there and you need to find the right one for you. Zoom has had its issues, and including privacy breaches. So you do need to make sure that that's something that you're looking after with your business. And also another thing that I've learnt is a need to protect IP, so intellectual property. So because CQ Shopfront was going online, I needed to be really careful about how I set it up so that not everybody in the whole world was able to view the videos that were being produced. We had partners who'd invested in the project that were specifically wanting it delivered to Central Queensland artists. So the CQ Shopfront Facebook group became a private group, and people had to answer questions to get in there to validate that they were from the Central Queensland zone, and they're the ones who are able to view the content. It is protecting that IP has been really important for the next phase of what CQ Shopfront is evolving into as a business model. If you go to the next one, please, Trudy. So as a result of CQ Shopfront, it's not even fully delivered. I'm only halfway through a 2-year delivery of this program. I've actually been approached by other regions to deliver this same program in other areas. So I've had to develop another business plan. So this is my third business that's emerging right now. It's the creation of an online platform for teaching and learning. So although a lot of artists in this region are very keen on how to deliver workshops online since COVID-19, and there's certainly a lot of platforms out there that I'm exploring for that at the moment. This is about having an entrepreneurial mindset. So I've been approached by another regional council. They want me to make a bid to actually deliver the project down there. So I've had to think of a new name, which took about 12 different people, about 3 weeks to come up with something that still included the term Shopfront. And I've created a new brand. I'll be developing an online platform. I've had to apply for funding in order to develop that online platform. And it's really about having the entrepreneurial mindset, taking advantage of those opportunities that come forward. So as an entrepreneur, most artists are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are creative thinkers, and we're very fast, very quick on our feet to come up with solutions to different things that people are pitching at us. One of the things we do need to make sure that we are doing, though, is looking at those opportunities, choosing the ones that we do want to run with, the things that give us energy in return, and discarding the things that we really don't want to go down that track. So choose those opportunities that you really want to follow up with and that you're passionate about with your business. Thanks, Trudie.
Great, thank you so much, Shelley. So I'm going to extend on a little bit from what Shelley was talking about there earlier when she was mentioning just how important it is to have lots of partners and other people involved in your business. So when you are thinking about something in regards to, your creative projects, the work that you produce, who do you turn to for advice? And do those people have the answers that you need? Sometimes, well, nearly always, we all have to develop new networks when we hit a different point of our business path and we are venturing into new territory and you don't have all of the answers yourself. I've had the opportunity through various different roles that I've done to talk to a lot of really successful artists, what they do, how they do it, and have the opportunity to pick their brains a little bit. And one of the things that I most consistently hear is just how important it is to have strong networks, work outside of your region, and collaborate on projects. So I've just popped an image up here. This is just an example from, a personal example for me. So 4 to 5 years ago, my background is as a curator. So that's what I've spent most of my time doing over the last few years is for, not-for-profit, commercial galleries as well as public galleries. So 4 to 5 years ago, I finished working with Bundaberg Regional Galleries. And the big thing that I no longer had when I went independent and started being a freelancer was that I no longer had an exhibition space itself. I was no longer attached to one organisation. So in order to be sustainable and successful as a regionally based curator, which is not something that we have tons of those kicking around. So for that to work, I needed to have a really strong network of museums and galleries that I could work with and do different projects with and create exhibitions for their spaces. It aligned perfectly. I'd been a member of AMAGA, so the Australian so I always get the title wrong because we've recently changed it, the Australian Museums and Galleries Association. So I've been a member for them for only a short amount of time, but they were changing their committee and they reached out and invited me to be a part of the committee, and I ended up in the Vice President's role and have continued in that till today. That really expanded my networks out across the state of Queensland, which has been incredibly helpful for me, but it also has enabled me to help other people in our region as well. So it gives me a resource when somebody's got a question or they're like, oh, we don't have this kind of policy document. I can reach out to the committee or the networks through that and help get advice or access information or find out how other people are doing things. So that's been a really positive thing. And, you know, personally, just one example of a network and the importance of kind of mining that, because when I was much, you know, a while ago, when I was much younger and starting out sort of in professional work, I was really uncomfortable with the term networking, and I don't know if anybody else feels that it just sometimes has that slightly grubby feeling to it, or that uncomfortableness of having to self-promote, you know, go to networking breakfast, hand out your business card, be very forward. For me as an introvert, I find that type of idea of networking really off-putting. But luckily over the years and over the various different roles that I've done throughout my career, I've soon realised that it's actually not thinking about networking in regards to what can other people do for you, but actually being generous with what you can do for other people. So by offering your time, by giving people advice, being a connector, introducing people to each other, that's actually the value of a network, because what you do is you create these and build these beautiful relationships where you've gone out of your way to help someone. So then next time when you need help, you've got this great group of people that you can reach out to and ask for their assistance on overcoming or learning that next thing that you need to know to take your business to the next level. So I really, really encourage you to look critically at your networks, think about what's there, who's there. Are you getting in the information that you don't? And if you're not getting the information that you need, think about where to. How can you get involved in something? Where can you give your time to in order to make a strong foundation in that area? So an artist that I've had the privilege of working with in about the last 18 months or so is Donna Marie Robinson. She is an artist, a visual artist. She's based up in the Mackay region. And I've had great chats with Donna, and she's run workshops for us at CQ Resin and things like that. And she's a bit of a digital arts guru. I mean, she does visual arts and creative work and festivals and all kinds of different things. But one of the things that she has really helped me with advice and helped other people with advice is really emphasizing that one of the key things you need to know as an artist is that you don't actually have to know how to do everything, or you definitely don't have to know how to do it from day one. It's all about looking who can you collaborate with. So who can you turn to learn what you need to learn and to work on it together and to be in that sort of shared partnership of going forward. So for instance, if you're great at songwriting, but you really have no idea how to do production, well, who can you reach out to and, you know, extend the invitation to work with them on a project? And by doing that, you then learn how to do it together, or you learn from them and then they learn something from you. And all kinds of opportunities open up that wouldn't necessarily if you just work solo all the time. So with Donna, one of the examples that she gave me that how that has worked for her over her career is, so for instance, so she's a bit of a digital arts guru, so she can do all kinds of digital art, she can do projection work, she can do festival work, but she hadn't up until recently forayed too much into the public art space, and it was something she was really interested in doing because there's such great opportunities out there. So when an opportunity came along in Townsville, so this is just near the Strand, she reached out to another artist that she knew, so Tracy Johnson, and she said, hey, let's do this thing together. Had a great idea, and they did a really successful collaboration where you know, Donna was able to bring all of her digital arts design skills into it and, you know, sort of really helped Tracy with that side of stuff. And then Tracy brought all of the fabrication and her public art installation skills to the project as well, thereby helping Donna learn the public art process of what's involved in fabrication and design and all of those elements. She got to learn that much quicker than if she was trying to navigate that project fully solo, fully for the first time. So I just think it's a lovely example of how you can sort of learn by getting creative together. So really think about the importance of collaboration and networks when it comes to your business and how you're approaching that. So Shelley.
Excellent, thank you. So one really, really important part of your business is knowing what you're selling and who you're selling it to. And one of the greatest aha moments I think a lot of people have had so far in doing CQ Shopfront was this particular part of the marketing process, which was creating target audience profiles. So what I do with this is I actually imagine a certain person that I'm selling to, who is someone that has bought my product before. And these are the questions that I ask myself when I'm thinking of that person. To create a profile around them, that means that I know what they want, how to get in touch with them, and how to sell my products to them. So having a really strong understanding of these target audiences really helps your business to move forward. So I'm just going to give you an example today that's a bit of a make-believe one, utilising the fact that I've actually started my new business in Block Designs, which is a design business, and I'm going to be making some soft furnishings in the long term. So I'm focusing on selling a range of cushions. So my target audience profile in this case is the house flipper. So you see lots of renovation shows on TV. That's what this person is. If you go to the next one, please, Trudie. So in describing who a house flipper is, they are a 25 to 65-year-old person. They buy decor and they are usually female, the female is the buyer. They work full time and they may be balancing other things in life like motherhood with the renovation because they dream of being Joanna Gaines. Does everyone know who Joanna Gaines is? Yeah. You'll learn more about her in a moment. So Joanna Gaines is the host of an international television show that flips houses. They spend weeknights trolling the internet for ideas and the weekends doing the hard yakka, so doing the renovation then. They usually live in larger cities where renovation is more profitable. So in taking into account this particular profile, I need to think about, there's not a lot of people who fit this particular profile in my own backyard in Bundaberg. There's not a lot of money in flipping houses in the real estate market of Bundaberg. So I need to be taking my business outside of the region if I'm looking at selling to this particular market. They are discerning buyers and are always looking for the latest trends to dress up their renovated home before they flip it. So putting it on the market to sell. So there's Joanna Gaines, for those who don't know her, the renovator extraordinaire that many of us look up to and want her to come and decorate our own homes. So why would they buy your product is the next question. So in the case of this house flipper, they like your story of how you develop your designs. A really important thing that Trudie will be exploring shortly is how to share your story about you as a practitioner. It's one of the most vital tools in marketing. The second one there is they are wanting to buy decor for staging their renovated house for sale. They want on-trend designs that are current. They saw your product on a lifestyle channel. It was featured in Better Homes and Gardens magazine. And I've got an example of an artist who did exactly that shortly. They found it on Pinterest. It's another place where a lot of people go to explore ideas. I know Rod, who's here today, his wife does a lot of that. We've actually got a lot of common boards on Pinterest when we've been renovating our houses. Late night impulse buys happen with these people too. You find them on social media late at night, and that's when they are going in and buying your product because that's when they're making some key decisions around what they're creating. And it was recommended in a blog by Joanna Gaines. So if you got that sort of recognition, you're going to be selling pretty well. So next one there, Trudie. Yep. So this in this photo here is Julie Patterson, who is an artist that Trudie will be referring to shortly as well. She was one of the presenters of one of the webinars in CQ Shopfront, and this is her pictured with the host, one of the hosts of Better Homes and Gardens. So she actually, I think it was last year or the year before, was a presenter of a section showing Tara how to actually screen print designs. So she sells fabric for a living and designs fabric. So this was a fantastic boost for her career. So how do you reach this particular target audience, or how do you reach your target audience is the thing to consider. So influencer blogs are really important right now. So like I was mentioning before, Joanna Gaines, that's aiming pretty high in getting an influencer to talk about your work. But have a think about those people who are out there who actually write blogs that are relevant to your particular part of the art sector and what they could do to promote what you do. Pinterest and Instagram are the two really visual places for visual artists and design. So you've got to have really strong imagery, which Trudie will be discussing shortly. And that is really a place where people stalk for ideas. And this particular type of person, so these flippers, that's where they go. Lifestyle magazines and articles, obviously, and advertising. So that's something that could be a marketing tool for you and your product. Having a product launch at a local homeware store would be another idea that could be done with the launch of these cushions. You could take great photos, show it in a retail environment, and use that on your social media. And obviously getting a segment on Better Homes and Gardens featuring your practice would be the ultimate. I think that's it. Over to you now, Trudie.
Great. Thank you so much for taking us through that case study, Shelley. I think it's really good to see in detail an example of how profiling can really help you get really quite savvy in thinking about who you're trying to aim, who your ideal customer or audience is for your work. I think that's super helpful to see an example of that. So as Shelley mentioned, marketing and promotion, totally a part of every business, something that we all have to do, even if you don't want to or want to run screaming from it, like we all do at times. It's so essential. But I think it's a little bit of it is adjusting how you think about it and changing that focus. So I really want to talk about the importance of storytelling. So I encourage you to stop thinking about marketing and promotion and start thinking about storytelling instead. Because why that's a bit of a game changer is for many of us, it's actually really hard to self-promote. The notion of putting yourself out into the world and going, what I do is awesome, what I make is awesome. That whole thing can just sometimes feel a little bit crass, for want of a better word. And in our Australian culture, I think it's even more so because we have quite a self-effacing, sense of humour and culture, a bit of a tall poppy syndrome. All those things can make it a little bit awkward when you're trying to put yourself out there, particularly when you're starting your business and you're trying to get used to how that looks or feels or getting used to that process. It's much easier to tell a story about yourself than to promote yourself. There's heaps of resources out there, and it's a big, there's lots of people who know far, 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 far more about marketing than I do that talk about storytelling. So do pursue that, look into it. But there's two things that I'm going to cover in this very short session, which is basically the starting point of storytelling. And my recommendations are that you will need great pictures and great words in order to be really successful in telling a great story about you and why what you do is of interest to other people. So when it comes to great pictures, I'm going to go through some examples of some people that I know that I think have nailed this really well. So when it comes to great pictures, my recommendation is that you will need a really great environmental portrait of yourself. You'll probably, need quite a few of them, but at least one when you're starting out that's just a total cracker. For those of you with us today or listening to the recording that are visual artists, you guys have hit the jackpot because you've got the best environments to work with. I might be biased, but there's something really yummy about a creative studio, having all of your, product around you, having your process, all of that kind of stuff. It's just yummy and it's interesting, and people love that behind the scenes. People love the behind the scenes any business. But if it's a creative business, that's like way more exciting. So give them that. Don't think that a portrait needs to be super formal or doesn't show you just naturally who you are. So the example that I've included here is an artist, Greg Mallion. So Greg and I used to run a commercial gallery together back in Sydney way back in the day. And he threw away his life of being an arts worker and plunged full time into being an artist. And he's done that really successfully. So his income now far exceeds whatever he earned, being the director of a gallery. And he now, well, up until COVID, was, regularly showing his work at 1 or 2 international art fairs every year. He's represented by multiple commercial galleries. And he's just doing really well, which is absolutely fabulous to see. And I just think this is such a lovely example of an environmental portrait. It's showing Greg in his studio, in his environment, in what he paints in, with all of his mess around him. It's a relaxed, comfortable image, and tells us a lot about who he is and his ethos as an artist, and includes his work in that image. So think about that. Think about the images that you're using to promote yourself. How much is it reflecting your creativity and your personality? Another fabulous example, I love this image of Cindy. So Cindy is a costume designer and fashion designer based in Gympie. So where possible, I've tried to shout out to regional artists, because I think it's good for us to hear from people who are just doing ace things from regional communities. So Cindy she runs lots of different stuff, lots of different labels, arts initiatives, projects, festivals. She's a real gun. But her big claim to fame is that she designed stage millinery wear for Lady Gaga. So that's a pretty awesome effort. Love this portrait of her, because she's taken a very traditional fabric, being tartan, and my God, has she made it, just so edgy, so interesting. It shows that she's more than just fashion. It's bordering on that costume. There's just something so fun to it. She's got the tools of her trade, the scissors in her hands, and her photographer has done a great job of capturing her very natural, fun-loving personality in that image as well. So that's a really great example. So think about people, keep your eyes open to different people that you're following. Look at their portraits and how they're expressing their creative business through those portraits. There's just so many different ways you can do it. So definitely look to people that you admire. You're going to need some other images, not just portraits. So when it comes to creativity, it again comes back to that behind the scenes. People want to see your process, and they want to see your product, like what it is that you actually make. So a bit of a shout out here to one of our fabulous artists in the Bundaberg region, Adrian Williams. So Adrian Williams is a landscape painter, and a big part of her process is plein air. And I just think this image that she showed on Instagram, she just nailed it. It's so good. A little bit of text with it saying that she went to Tasmania. She's staying in this, ridiculously remote, cute little cold hut in the middle of a mountain somewhere. It's snowing everywhere, and she's gone outside to do her day of sketching. And she's just set up that image so well. So we're seeing an insight into her work and the amazing landscape that she's doing it in. So we're seeing her process. We're seeing not the end product. We're going on the journey. She's telling us a story. These process images are really, really great. And I really encourage you all, songwriters, capture yourself, jotting down pen and paper in really inspirational areas. Just take us on a journey. Show us something about how you do what you do. Also, another person that Shelley mentioned earlier, so Katie White. So Katie's a Bundaberg-born artist, but also is from, lives and practices out of the Toowoomba region now. Katie's really fabulous, does lots of creative stuff, and I've had the opportunity to work with Katie and get to know her process better. So this is an example, the artwork on the left here, of her really colourful, abstract style that she paints in, and she does everything from small works on paper right through to large scale murals. But you can see that that's a really normal cropped image of an artwork, which you need those images. Really good to have quality images like that, and that's a perfect example of it. But what those type of images don't convey is a scale or a sense, or what I call context. So what Katie does really well is these context images. So here she is holding one of her artworks and she took a photo of that. I know it sounds simple, but so many people don't think to do this. So immediately looking at it, you get a sense of physically, what is this? And you immediately know how big it is because you know how big a human is. You know, you just get such a sense of what it is. And I saw on her Instagram, I think in the last couple of days, she did a really short video, 10 to 15 seconds, of just like a person walking across a field, holding an artwork like that, beautiful late afternoon light, just so attention grabbing and so well done. Again, it just adds that context of what her artwork physically is like in reality, as opposed to just a cropped image. Another great context image. So this really shows how she scales her work up to include her mural work. So this is a cafe in Toowoomba. But the smart thing about this is she's actually included herself in the photo. So you get scale again, and you get the sense that this is a building that people live and work and are a part of. And I think people can really make photography just jump and make it that bit more engaging, because we relate to other humans. You know, it's kind of just something instinctive within us. So yeah, so really assess your images. Think about what stories you're telling through them. Think about that you're going to need a cracking portrait, a cracking process images, and you know, you'll have to repeat this stuff over and over again, and some cracking context images that not only show, you know, your work well presented in a cropped one, but how else can you give it scale or make it feel as though it's a physical object that belongs in a place. So the other thing you need to nail the storytelling is some great words. Biographies. So this is the good news for the writers and the musos out there. You guys seem to do this really, really well. And I think it obviously is your talent with the written word. So visual artists, when looking for inspiration, definitely turn to some writers. Like even the novels you're reading, just read that little blurb about, you know, about the author. They're often really creative. They're really engaging. Try to let go of some of the dry way that we kind of just factually describe ourselves, and really find your personality and your creativity in how you talk about yourselves. So a great bio will be anything from about 1 to 3 paragraphs, and it will sum up who you are and what you do, and it should have your voice in it and your personality. Some great examples that I wanted to give. So I've just got a couple of these. So Caterpillar is a artist based in the Bundaberg Gladstone region. And this is one of my favourite bios I've ever read, and it's because it's got the best hook ever. So the first line is, Catherine Appel is a born and bred farm girl who's scared of cows. So I immediately go, tell me more. Like, it's just a great, you know, one-liner, gets you hooked. You're like, tell me more about this awesome person. And then she goes on to say, she lives among the gum trees, kangaroos and cattle on a Queensland grazing property. So she's set the scene. You've got some context about who she is, where she lives, what's interesting about it, maybe what's unique about her. Maybe a lot of her audience isn't from a rural area, so this is intriguing. Kat paints pictures with words because much as she'd love to, Kat can't draw. Humour. Already we're 3 lines in and we've already got a sense of who Kat is and her personality. She loves pumping poetry because she can flex her muscles across other genres to bend and break writing rules. A trained teacher and a literary consultant, Kat shares her passion for words at schools and festivals. So by the end of the first paragraph, we have a good sense of what Kat does, not just her personality. The next bit is all about what she can offer. So it details that. And then the last bit is 2 of her, you know, most important and significant achievements, which is just awesome and kind of like solidifies that she's the real deal and she's got the experience, you know, that you should want to get on board with her because she's, you know, she's the real deal. In 3 paragraphs, she's achieved that. And I think it's really well done. And once you start sort of analysing other people's bios like this, you'll get some really good ideas of how to improve your own. Most bios that I read start with that last paragraph, which is, you know, Trudie Leigo is a multidisciplinary artist who, you know, went to the National Art School and achieved this and that. It's great, it's factual, but is it particularly engaging? So always start with the most interesting thing first, hook them in, show your personality. You're a creative business, so the way you talk about yourself should be creative. Another example. So we mentioned Julie Patterson before. So I've kind of stalked Julie online for years. So it was lovely to actually engage and, chat with her and get to know her a little bit this year. That was really cool. But she's got, for a visual artist, she's got probably one of the best bios that I've seen online. And so she says, I am a painter, printmaker and designer of textiles. I own a small fabric company called Cloth that I set up almost 25 years ago because it made sense at the time and it still does now. I work with a small team of people who love what they do, making textiles by hand the old-fashioned way. I collaborate with others for the joy of making something together and we couldn't make alone. In Blackheath, I run imperfect workshops for the creatively curious. I take commissions and I exhibit. My favourite place to be is working in my studio. I've written a book and a manifesto to live by. I live a simple life. It feels good. Like, isn't that just a yummy bio? Like, don't you want to I read that and I just want to be friends with Julie. Like, it really explains her ethos, her values of handmade, collaborating with others, living a simple life. It's warm and she's very simply stating what she does. It's quite humble as well because she has achieved a lot, but you get a sense of that this is a confident person knowing what they're about. The difference between if you're talking third person and first person, often it's really appropriate if you've got a website that is, www.juliepatterson to talk in the first person, but have a version of your bio so that you can supply it in the third version when needed. So, for introductions and things like that. So that's just you could talk about storytelling and the importance of it for ages, but that is a really sort of simple starting point of thinking about getting some great words together, some great images, looking to other people for inspiration. So hopefully that's a good starting point for you all, or it's making you rethink perhaps what you've got. And don't worry, we all don't nail it. I mean, don't go on my website. Dear God, I've got so much that I need to update and never have time to. So this is all stuff that you just chip away at and you continue to chip away at. And we're always learning and trying to improve it and sharing information with others and getting better as we do it. So that is the end of our, formal part of this presentation. We've got time for questions. So I'll stop sharing the presentation now and jump into the chat. Now, was it just Shelley offering anything, or do we have any questions there at this point?
There's no questions in there at the moment, but all of those resources and links are in there for the different parts that Trudie was talking about before. So make sure you take note of those. You can copy and paste them into a file of your own if you like, because there's links to the artists, there's links to some of those business planning resources, all sorts of things there.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone. I mean, this is always the tricky bit when you're doing these presentations because we don't always know where everybody's at and what information is helpful to them. So I hope there's been something, a bit of a gem in there for you all. Here's a question from Joan. Do you recommend using your own name as an artist or create a business name? Shelley, because you've created 3 businesses, what's your thoughts on this process?
It really depends what your long-term goal is. Do you want to have a business that you can on-sell? Because you can't on-sell your name. If you are just wanting the practice to be about you and the work, and in the long term, you're not looking at having a business that's developing a product that you can sell the business as a package later down the track, use your name. Otherwise, like some of the ones that I'm developing are ones that could be handed off to people. I could sell on the designs that I create for ink block designs to somebody else down the track. So that doesn't necessarily need to be associated with my name in the long term. So I've created a brand around that. So it really does depend on what your long-term goals are. And I needed to be told that by somebody who doesn't work in the arts, by the way. I have lots of mentors around me and I go, do I practice using my name? Do I not? And it was a friend who actually just said, no, you need to have a name because down the track, this type of business is something that you could sell. I'm like, okay, that's a nice simple way of putting it. So you just need to think about your long-term goals.
Great advice. And I'd probably just throw in there as well from a practical point of view. I spend a lot of time stalking artists. So Googling people online, looking for, creative, talented people, you're looking for people's websites, YouTube videos, like any way that I can stalk somebody, I'm doing that. So if you are thinking about using your own name for your business name and for your creative practice, make sure that that name is pretty unique. If you've got a fairly common name, chances are there might be another artist somewhere. Like I do it all the time. I try to find somebody and I can't find them because I'm finding all of these other people that are an artist in the United States or in the UK or something like that. So that's a really small point, but something worth thinking about. My business name is Trudie Leigo Projects because I'm 100% confident there is no Trudie Leigos out there. You Google it, there's just, it's such an uncommon name. So that's, and I never have the intention of selling my business. My business is only me and my reputation. So that was my thoughts behind that. But yeah, always do some good research. Whatever name you're thinking about, do some good research and check what else is out there.
Yeah. Rod has just put up a question there about websites and where do you start. So I don't know about you, Trudie, but my first website for the Ideas Distillery it was just built on Wix and I did it myself. But I've now got to a point where I'm like, I don't really like that. So now I'm outsourcing some of the design work to a local graphic designer. You need to think about in your business, do you have time for that or do you have the skills in order to deliver that? So I have some basic graphic design skills. They're not great. So I'm getting to a point now where I'm quite busy in my business and I need to start looking at those collaborations and partnerships, and I'm definitely outsourcing the graphic design. I hate doing accounting. I'm outsourcing that too. So I do the basics of my business. You just need to choose those things and outsource where you can. But basic websites can be set up through platforms like Wix or Shopify or GoDaddy. There's so many different ones out there now with templates that make it really, really easy for you to design a simple one. I know a lot of artists who do their own, because we're good at creating things that are visually appealing, but if it's not a skill-based, definitely outsource it. And Debbie's made a good point there about making sure that your domain name is available. In another role, I'm currently working in a project where we really struggled. We registered the name for a project and we're building a brand around it, and then found out that there was a not-for-profit group that had named a project that they hadn't registered the name, but we could not access the Facebook name. We couldn't access so many different things because the name was being used by other people in other ways. So you really do need to do a bit of exploration around that before you make a final decision.
Totally. And I think how you plan to use your website determines how much you need to invest into your website. So for me personally, I don't really see my website as a marketing tool. I know that sounds bizarre. My website is treated more as a reference. So I'm going to supply that website to people. They're going to be curious about who I am, Googling who I am, or I'm applying for something and I've put that as my link, and it's a reference check of like, hey, who is this person? Are they the real deal? What do they actually do? And there's examples of my work and my projects on there. But if you're actually trying to sell something through your website, you're going to need a website that performs a lot higher than that. So, my doing a simple Wix template and just managing that myself works for me personally. But if you're really trying to be competitive and cut through a selling space, I would highly recommend working with a web developer or really upskilling yourself in that space and being aware of the time that you're going to need to put into that. Yes. Yeah. So I'm seeing Debbie agreeing with that around if you want to shop on your website is definitely more involved. Totally. So be prepared to go on the long journey of learning about that and devoting time to it, or totally outsource it. But be prepared for the costs of outsourcing it or finding that happy balance between the two.
I've had to recently outsource through another role a basic website that cost only about $3,000 and was using the Wix platform, but was done by somebody who made it look really visually appealing, versus what I'm doing with Makers Shopfront, because that's going to be a massive site where people will be able to sign in and access resources. It's got to have lots of storage. I actually have to get a tailor-made website, and that's why I've applied for funding, because the funding is going to cost cover 10,000 of it. And fortunately, I have a husband who is a developer who is going to in kind contribute the rest of the website's development. So finding those little partnerships is ideal. But yeah, so a website can cost from that to that depending on what you're doing.
Absolutely. And look, I think, I mean, websites is a whole hour in itself as well, if not more, because I think there's just so many different things involved in it. And really also think about what your whole marketing strategy is going to be, because ideally a website will perform best if all of your social media keeps referencing back to that. If that's your main content and your platform, and then you're using that as you're launching for all of your other ways, blog or social media, or how else you're regularly connecting people. So there can be a lot to it. Don't be daunted by it. But I do encourage everybody to get some kind of website and keep it updated. Because there are people like me as a curator or a project manager out there constantly stalking people and trying to find how I can contact them, examples of work, who are they good at what they do, all that kind of stuff. So you never know who's out there trying to stalk you.
I love that terminology.
Very appropriate.
Awesome. Well, look, guys, we are about running out of time. But before we go, I'd like to just hand over to Rod Ainsworth to say a quick word. He is our Manager of Arts and Cultural Services at Bundaberg Regional Council. So I'll hand over to Rod.
Great, thanks, Robert. Look, I really quickly just wanted to say a massive thanks to Shelley and to Trudie for hosting this for us. Also, thanks to Robert, who's managing this whole project. And of course, another thanks to funders. This is part of a Regional Arts Development Fund project. When COVID hit, the first thing that we did was talk to Arts Queensland, who partner with Council on the Regional Arts Development Fund, to talk about how we could repurpose some of those funds for the purposes of the sector and for recovery. So developing these ideas and conversations program was only one small part of a recovery journey. So thanks for being part of it, everybody. Thanks. This is, it's as much for, it's as much for afterwards as it is for the people who have turned up here. So obviously it's been recorded. It'll go onto the website. So check out artsbundaberg.com.au. For that information or for anything else arts related. I will just say, just a quick plug, a really exciting week this week in that our galleries are opening again. Thank goodness, I tell you what. From this Saturday, all of our galleries will be open again. There's 3 exceptional exhibitions. Adrian Williams is curating an exhibition called Found Studio Dog, which is at Bundaberg Regional Art Gallery. Upstairs in Gallery 2, there's a retrospective of the Burnett Traffic Bridge. It's 120 years old, and so it's a partnership with Transport and Main Roads. And out at the Childers Art Space, there's a beautiful little exhibition, which is a response exhibition to our Art as an Act of Optimism campaign, which we've been running throughout this whole time. So people who have responded to all of the #ArtsBundy at Home art challenges, there's samples of everybody's contributions, and it's a really lovely story to tell about how people just really got into that space during COVID. So get a chance, go and have a look at that one out at Childers. And look, thanks again. And as Robert said, there's another session. Our last session's on the 12th of September, and he'll probably say a bit more about that. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. And thank you to everyone for attending this webinar. But also too, of course, I'd like to give a special thanks to our wonderful guest presenters. So thank you so much, Shelly and Trudie. It has been really, really valuable. And I'm sure that our viewers have taken plenty of good notes from this session. So before you go, mark your diaries. Everyone is welcome to tune into the Facebook Live Q&A on Saturday, the 12th of September. Now, this one is called Art as an Act of Optimism, It's our community panel, and it will be streamed live from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and that's Saturday the 12th of September. As I said at the start, we are also looking for a curious live audience who would like to participate. Now, that will be there in the flesh of the recording. So obviously, due to COVID, seats are limited, so we're asking people to submit questions to ask for the Q&A. So the conversation will explore arts recovery in our community and how we can thrive now and also beyond COVID. So if you would like to be part of our studio audience, please send your question into moncrief@bundaberg.qld.gov.au, and we'll have a look through your questions and then invite our lucky audience to participate there on the day. Once again, thank you all for joining. If you want to check these out, jump online to artsbundaberg.com.au. Right, good night, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks. Good night, everyone.